of the Commission is bearing fruits and will continue to do so as government President Ramaphosa, as you'll all know, ascended into the presidency to inherit a state crippled through corruption, state capture, and a stagnant economy. The COVID-19 pandemic worsened the challenges of unemployment and poverty. Notwithstanding these mounting difficulties, the president embarked on a bold investment, growth, and employment drive. This effort raised 1.14 trillion rands in new investment commitments through the 4 SA investment conferences. This is over 90% of the 1.2 trillion target for government's ambitious investment drive. Of these commitments, around 330 billion rands has already flowed into the economy. About 15 billion rands has been invested in black industrialist businesses. This effort has gone further to establish the Infrastructure Fund as a blended finance facility for infrastructure, and Infrastructure SA to coordinate a massive public infrastructure build. To date, 34 out of 50 strategic infrastructure projects are in implementation stages, accounting for 281 billion rands of a total budget of 340 billion rands. The Public Employment and Youth Empowerment established the Youth Employment Service, known as YES, together with private sector partners, which has to date created over 86,500 work experiences for young people. It has created over about 1,098,304 work and livelihood opportunities for unemployed South Africans through the presidential employment stimulus. Of the participants, 84% are youth, 62% are women. And the key programs of the stimulus include employing 596,109 education and general assistants in 22,000 schools, providing production input vouchers to 142,004 small-scale farmers, provided 25,000 opportunities in environmental management and rehabilitation. The president led far-reaching economic reforms that led to the establishment of Operation Vulindlela as an initiative between the presidency and National Treasury to drive an ambitious economic reform agenda to accelerate growth, investment, and job creation. Some of the key achievements to date are on telecommunications, where we finalized auction of high-demand broadband spectrum, enabling lower data cost and a significant expansion of broadband access. On embedded generation, remove the licensing threshold for private investment in embedded electricity production. Over 1,132 megawatts as of the 5th of September 2022 of private renewable power generation have been registered to date, with a pipeline of over 6,000 megawatts of projects at various stages of development. On ports and rail, identified possible private sector partners to invest in and manage container terminals at the Durban and Ngqura ports, and issued a request for proposals to allow third-party access to the rail rate network. On water, we cleared the water use license backlog and significantly improved turnaround time. Also published the Green Drop report for the first time since 2014 to ensure better monitoring of water and wastewater treatment quality, enabling stronger interventions in failing municipalities. In tackling poverty and building human capital, the President and his administration introduced the national minimum wage for the first time in South Africa's history, guaranteeing a minimum floor below which no worker may be paid, expanded social grants for people most affected by COVID-19, including special SRD grant, which reached around 11 million unemployed people. Launched the SAFE program, sanitation for schools, to mobilize public and private funds to replace pit toilets. To date, 2,300 safe and appropriate toilet facilities have been built. Increased percentage of school learners not paying fees from 71.1% in 2018 to 75.5% in 2021. Increased NEFSAS funding for poor and working class students in universities and TVET colleges from 21 billion rands in 2018 to 38.6 billion rands in 2021. The total number of students funded increased from 580,000 in 2018 to 770,000 in 2021. Increased the number of learners received free school meals by 500,000 from 9.1 million in 2018 to 9.6 million now. We'll continue to share more details of major milestones of the Ramaphosa-led administration in the coming weeks. However, it's important to emphasize that when people judge the President's performance in office, they do so based on facts and not based on rumor mongering and other misinformed perceptions. Just a bit on the President's program for the upcoming days. On Wednesday, which is tomorrow, the President will attend the medium-term budget policy statement in Parliament in Cape Town. On Thursday, the 27th of October 2022, President Ramaphosa will welcome to the Union Buildings Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez Peros Castellon of the Government of Spain for an official visit. The visit will solidify already strong relations between South Africa and Spain. It will be Prime Minister Sanchez's first visit to South Africa since he assumed office in 2018. The expectation is that the visit will translate the long-standing bilateral relations between the two countries into tangible projects that will stimulate greater interest from Spain into South Africa, especially regarding trade, investment, tourism, and cooperation in other identified sectors. South Africa was the 40th largest destination for Spanish exports and 47th largest source of Spanish imports globally. Bilateral trade reached the highest peak in 2018 at 51.7 billion rands, before tapering off to 38.8 billion rands in 2019. Bilateral trade recovered slightly by 0.5% to 39.1 billion rands in 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Engagements during the visit will also include a session with the business communities from both countries. On Friday, the 28th, President Ramaphosa will attend the inauguration of Prime Minister-elect Sam Matekane of the Kingdom of Lesotho. Attending the inauguration will provide President Ramaphosa with the opportunity to congratulate the Prime Minister-elect on his electoral success and the people of the Kingdom for conducting successful elections. The visit to Lesotho will also cement relations with the Kingdom of Lesotho and its new leadership. On Saturday, the 29th of October, President Ramaphosa will preside over the official certificate of recognition handover ceremony to the Amazulu King, His Majesty King Misuzulu Kazolithini. The occasion will be held at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. South Africa is hosting peace talks to end the conflict in the Tigray region. And in this regard, President Ramaphosa is honored that the government of the Republic of South Africa has been requested to host the African Union-led peace talks between the government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and Tigray. The peace talks, which have been convened to find a peaceful and sustainable solution to the devastating conflict in the Tigray region started today, the 25th of October, and will end on the 30th of October. As a country committed to the African Union's objectives of silencing the guns, South Africa is ready to serve as a host and provide assistance to the peace talks. President Ramaphosa readily agreed when he received the African Union's request for South Africa to host the peace talks. Such talks are in line with South Africa's foreign policy objectives of a secure and conflict-free continent. The talks will be facilitated by former President Olusegun Obasanjo of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who will be supported by former President Uhuru Kenyatta of the Republic of Kenya, and former Deputy President Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka of the Republic of South Africa. South Africa wishes the facilitation team well and hopes the talks will proceed constructively and result in a successful outcome that leads to lasting peace for all the people of our dear sister country, Ethiopia. And now on to the UK. President Ramaphosa has sent his sincere congratulations to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak following his appointment by His Majesty King Charles III. South Africa and the United Kingdom enjoy historically strong and friendly relations, and the President expressed confidence that this strategic relationship will continue to grow from strength to strength. President Ramaphosa looks forward to working with Prime Minister Sunak to further strengthen the bonds of cooperation and friendship between the two countries. I'll end there for now, colleagues, and I will be happy to take questions at this time. Please.
One, two. Yes, yes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Magwenya. Just a few questions from my side. On the issue pertaining to former President Jacob Zuma, he said your president is corrupt. Your president has committed treason. Your president is busy with the side hustle, which is not permitted when you are the head of state. Just get the direct response from the presidency and what the president has said directly to those allegations by former President Jacob Zuma, his predecessor. Secondly, former President Mbeki has been very critical of President Ramaphosa, particularly within the past year and a half. What relationship do the two have, particularly looking at the historical relations dating back to that leaked report of President Cyril Ramaphosa, then as an NEC member, along with other NEC members of the ANC, in a plan allegedly to topple Mbeki at the height of his presidency. The relationship has been fostered since President Ramaphosa toppled in the state of negotiations in the early 90s. How has that relationship fared thus far? Thank you.
Hello. Formerly Momotumokolo, UFM. The President said lifestyle audits for the President, Deputy President, Ministers, Deputy Ministers are being managed by the Director General in the Presidency and undertaken by an independent external service provider. Who is the independent external service provider? When was this service provider appointed? And when can we expect the outcome of the lifestyle audits to be released? My second question, the President made a fresh commitment to implement the Zondo Commission recommendation on the intelligence services and the recommendations by the high-level review panel on state security agency. Last year, the Presidency moved the state security to the Presidency. What has been some of the interim measures taken by the Presidency to strengthen the agency since this move?
Sorry, ma'am, I didn't get you.
Okay.
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 Do you have another question?
Okay. Well, with the SABC, I've seen that, Mr. Magwenya, you spoke at length about government or the administration of President Ramaphosa creating jobs, especially for young people. Now the question is, what has the administration done in terms of engaging business? Because it seems government is the only one that is creating jobs, as opposed to being a collective responsibility by government, labor, and business. What have you do as the administration to make sure that business as well contribute to the creation of jobs? And I'm saying this against the backdrop of government being the only sole provider, or maybe government becoming an employment scheme as opposed to an institution either to give services, not being the sole responsibility, its sole responsibility being to create jobs. And maybe secondly, you said that President Ramaphosa has achieved a lot, and you said that people are informed by rumor mongering and misinformed perception. Are you saying President-elect and President Zuma are informed by perception and are rumor mongering?
Okay, last one, Chief Commander.
In your opening statement, you say President Cyril Ramaphosa inherited basically a corrupt state or a state that has been plagued by corruption and other challenges that have led to lack of job creation, unemployment, and economic growth. But some would argue that that statement is not entirely true. He did not inherit it. He was part of it. And he did not speak about the rot that he was happening since he was part of it from 2012. So that statement is not entirely true. He said nothing about the rot that was happening. And then you also touched on the issue of Saturday. He will be handing over that certificate of recognition to King Misuzulu. Princess Magade, who's contesting King Misuzulu, has basically asked the president not to continue with recognizing the king. The president has not responded to the matter is in court. What is the president's response to what Princess Magade has said? On the Just Energy Transition Partnership, it's been a year now since wealthier nations made a pledge of $8.5 billion US in terms of supporting South Africa's just transition. There was going to be an engagement to say under what conditions is South Africa going to accept that funding. Has that been concluded? COP27 is fast approaching. Will the president and the South African delegation be unpacking that in Egypt during COP27? If the country has decided to accept that funding, under what conditions? On the issue of the Zondo Commission, following the president's address...
Chief Commander, how many questions?
Only two more to go. On the Zondo Commission, some have criticized the president, saying his address did not outline clearly what is he going to do. Basically, they've criticized his address as having been lukewarm. And also, when is he appointing the Inspector General of Intelligence? Lastly, when is he keeping his promise of engaging the media on a regular basis? He has not honored that commitment that he will engage and take questions from the media. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. At some point, colleagues, you'll have to remind me if I do not appropriately represent your questions. Okay, so let's start with Samgelo. And I think maybe Samgelo, it's best that I provide you with a clarification on the management of President Ramaphosa's financial interest. On assumption of the position of Deputy President in 2014, President Ramaphosa embarked on a process to comply with the Executive Ethics Code with respect to his financial interest. The Executive Ethics Code requires that members of the executive should either dispose of financial interest which may give rise to a conflict of interest, or place the administration of such interest under the control of an independent and professional person. the President decided to dispose of those interests, which may give rise to a conflict. On the 26th of November 2014, Shanduga announced Mr. Ramaphosa's divestment from the group. This involved the disposal of interest in regulated sectors like mining, telecommunications, and energy, all those which may give rise to a conflict of interest. He retained assets in some of the non-regulated sectors like property, farming, and restaurants. Although not required by the Executive Ethics Code, Mr. Ramaphosa put these remaining assets from the Shanduga divestment under the management of independent and professional persons. These non-regulated interests have subsequently been disposed of. The President's farming operations have always been separate from Shanduga and were therefore not part of these transactions. The farming properties are not businesses that may give rise to a conflict of interest. President Ramaphosa's directorships and shareholding in the respective farming entities have been included in his annual declaration of interest to Parliament from 2014 to 2018 and the Secretary of Cabinet from 2014 to 2022. Whilst the farming entities do trade in the purchase, sale, and breeding of game and livestock, the President does not earn a salary from these entities. Revenues earned from the trading of game and livestock cover salaries of workers, upkeep of the properties, and the remainder is reinvested into the breeding of unique game and livestock species, veterinary services, and other related costs. I think those are facts, and that covers that question. Anything else to the contrary will be pure speculation and innuendo that we cannot entertain. The second question, Samgelo, relates to the relationship between President Ramaphosa and President Mbeki. As far as President Ramaphosa is concerned, they have a very healthy relationship. President Mbeki has a direct line to President Ramaphosa. President Ramaphosa values opportunities where he engages with former President Mbeki. With respect to that old intelligence report, we really can't comment on those documents that were never authenticated in any shape or form, and there were never any investigations to that. How President Mbeki left office is well known, and it's a matter of historical record, which we're not going to reposition or describe in a different fashion from what is recorded in history and from what we all witnessed in Polokwane and subsequent thereafter. Your last question, Samgelo, you spoke about, I think I'm done with you, Samgelo, yeah. You.
Just the last one. On the issue of former President Jacob saying the cabinet is corrupt and is committed treason, particularly his specific response to you, maybe should be that particular clip, or if you can engage with him on those comments.
No, on Saturday, we were, as you know, we were occupied with finalizing, crossing T's and making sure every sentence is dotted on the President's response to the State Capture Commission report. We did not have that much time to engage over that press conference. On Sunday, we're preparing for the address to the nation. So the President has been occupied by real pressing matters in this regard. I think the outline I've just shared with you with respect to how the President has managed his financial interests puts that matter to rest. Any other thing, as I've said, is pure innuendo and speculation, which, quite frankly, we're not going to engage. Homolemo, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The service providers are yet to be appointed. So when that process is underway, I'm certain appropriate announcements will be made. SSA, there is new leadership at SSA. that has been appointed, that has been working to turn around SSA. The new bill is almost ready for submission to Parliament. The National Security Council meets regularly. The National Security Strategy that has been adopted by the National Security Council will soon be published for public consultation. And so all of those efforts are measures that have been taken to turn around the State Security Agency. And it doesn't end there. More work is still to be done, as you saw in the President's address on Sunday, as well as the detail that's contained in the response to the State Capture Commission. Was it you who asked about the IG? Or it was you? Let me just kind of add that part. With respect to the appointment of the Inspector General on Intelligence, paperwork has reached the Presidency early this week. So it will be processed as speedily as possible, and appropriate announcements will be made in that regard. Ntebu, by enumerating what President Ramaphosa's administration has achieved, particularly in those employment programs, we're not saying government is the only sole creator of jobs. That's number one. These are very specific programs. So for example, if you look at the, if you look at the education assistance, for example, the employment of the 509 education and general assistants in 22,000 schools. The idea with that program was to give an opportunity to unemployed graduates to earn some form of work experience. Often when young graduates are looking for employment, they face a hurdle of experience or lack thereof. And this program in particular was aimed at providing those sort of basic work experience, opportunity and basic skills that could assist those young people in their future endeavors for employment. Are we engaging business? Yes. There are constant engagements between government and business. I think about a month or so ago, not so long ago, the President addressed the Business Unity South Africa AGM. We are constantly engaged with business from a point of view of ensuring we continue to provide an enabling environment for business to thrive and grow and create jobs, to create an environment for public-private partnerships, to partner with business on a number of areas. For example, energy. You will know some of the private sector companies, for example, have engaged Eskom directly with respect to partnerships on renewables. You will know that the removal of the licensing threshold on embedded generation will benefit a lot of businesses when they're able to generate their own power. And, hopefully we'll get to a point where we will have a very clear mechanism that regulates how that power could be fed into the grid. So there are constant engagements on a number of issues between government and business. At no point in time will we ever claim to be the sole creators of jobs. We will do so with all social partners, including labor, for that matter. And that's why you have forums like NETLAC, for example, where those issues are constantly discussed. That's why you also still have, albeit somewhat a bit late, with respect to the deadline the President had set, you still have work underway into reaching the social compact that will include government, business, and other social partners. Spamandla. Spamandla, just look at the Zondo Commission report. The Zondo Commission report is an independent judicial report. It outlines the enormous amount of damage that was inflicted upon the state and its institutions. And that on its own qualifies the point I've made. I'm not going to reiterate the multiple volumes and pages coming out of that report, but just look at that report. If you're ever in doubt, read it and read it again. Look at the president's response and look at the amount of institutions that are enumerated as having been severely impacted by corruption and state capture. And that will give you a sense of the sort of bigger challenge that President Ramaphosa faced upon ascending to the presidency. With respect to the president, with respect to the president being silent during that time, I believe that issue was dealt with in his submissions at the Zondo Commission, and I don't think it warrants repeating. With respect to the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, as you'll know, Cabinet last week approved the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which is a 5-year roadmap for securing an inclusive and just energy transition for South Africa as it decarbonizes its energy sector. The investment plan sets out the scale of need and the investments required to achieve the decarbonization commitments made by the government of South Africa in line with its updated nationally determined contribution that was submitted to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Glasgow in November 2021. The plan outlines a range of investments totaling close to 1.5 trillion rands in 3 priority sectors, namely electricity, new energy vehicles, and green hydrogen. These sectors have been identified as offering significant potential for emissions reduction, social impact, and quality job creation. The development of the JET-IP gives effect to the Just Energy Transition Partnership, a partnership which South Africa established at COP26 together with France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the European Union. Through the JET-P, partner countries committed to mobilize an initial 8.5 billion dollars. See why numbers are difficult. Over a period of 3 to 5 years. Let me just go through that sentence again. Through the JET-P, partner countries committed to mobilize an initial $8.5 billion over a period of 3 years to 5 years. This catalytic financing is in turn intended to leverage significantly more funding from other local and international private and public sources. South Africa will continue to engage with its international partners at the highest level in the lead up to COP27 to ensure that the financing commitment is commensurate with the level of ambition committed to the investment plan. The investment plan will be made available to the public, and a process of further engagement with stakeholders will follow. Then we go to the criticism around the president's response to the Zondo Commission report. I don't know what informs the criticism. Maybe it's people who had other expectations and they've not read the president's response. If you read the president's response, you will pick up quite quickly and very easily that for every commitment that is outlined, there are time frames. There's a clear outline in terms of what government is considered, what the president is considered before arriving at a set of actions that have been adopted for implementation. So, for example, if you take PRASA, the Commission recommended that a commission of inquiry be instituted to investigate the issues at PRASA. However, because the SIU had already commenced with an investigation into matters at PRASA, the President has decided that he will expand the existing proclamation to give effect to the Zondo Commission's report and recommendations, and to widen the scope of investigation. So in that regard, there will be no need necessarily to institute a commission of inquiry right now until such time that investigation has been concluded. So that's just one example. The President has spoken about the need to develop a professional and ethical public service. That work is already underway. Minister Nlesi announced the details. I referred to them in my opening, and that is the work that will be led by the National School of Government and under the guidance of Professor Magwenya. So there's work underway there. There is work underway in the NPA with the establishment of the Independent Directorate, for example, and the President has enumerated the successes in that regard. So the criticism must be informed by facts, it must be specific to the areas in question, and it mustn't be just generic. There was a question about, media questions. We've been trying to set up a media briefing for the President. Unfortunately, the schedule has just been extremely punishing and is not allowed. But I think I must just correct something here. There's a distinction between the President seeking to address the nation and deciding that he's going to deliver a message to the rest of the nation versus the President's availability to engage with the media for slightly longer period than we often do. So as you will know, having covered the President in multiple locations around the country, we always endeavor to make him accessible and available to journalists. So I must then correct the perception that the President does not talk to journalists. Samgelo had an engagement with the President in Saudi Arabia. You had an engagement with the President in Northern Cape, albeit short, but nonetheless it was there. In most visits, they will manage to ask the President some questions in Botswana. So in most engagements or public commitments, we do endeavor to make him accessible and available as possible. What I think is in question here is the promised quarterly media briefing, which I take full responsibility for, which has not been for a lack of trying. It's just been a case of scheduling. The office, under the leadership of our Chief of Staff, is working on a day and a time in which such an engagement will happen, and will announce it appropriately. I can't commit to that date, but I think I can put my head on the block and say before the end of this year, we will have an engagement with the President. You've seen the international program, for example. The month of October, we have the month of November, we have the UK, Kenya, COP. It's a very punishing program, over and above domestic commitments. Colleagues, I hope I've covered all the questions. Oh, Princess Magate, yes. Okay, so let's deal with that issue, because papers have been filed in court. Right. So I think the first thing to say is, Pamandla, on this one, is that the President does not wish to get involved or to get into the dispute within the royal family. So that we must state categorically. That's number one. The act, and I'll come to that, The Act requires that when the royal family has made the decision on who ascends to the throne, it conveys that decision to the president via copter. In his papers, the president is not fighting any member of the royal family, except to defend his process that led to the decision to recognize King Misuzulu. What was in front of the president were records of meetings of the royal family and confirmation of the family's decision. Thank you. Okay. Gert?
The President said on Sunday, sorry, thanks. I'm thinking about completely literate. But let me try. The President said on Sunday that he's attending to the Commission's recommendations on members of the executive against whom adverse findings were made. Is there a time frame attached to that? Can I also ask two other very short questions? Is the President disappointed with the lukewarm reception on his submission on Sunday? I see the New York Times has also said it's neither here nor there, and he should have said something about cadre deployment. And then the last question, has ex-President Zuma also got an open line to the President? Can he also speak to the President whenever he feels he wants to speak to him?
Of course. Of course. President Zuma can reach out to President Ramaphosa with his concerns or ideas at any time he feels so appropriate. What I've said to some of your colleagues on this matter is that President Ramaphosa's expectation of former president is that their presence is that of elders who are there to guide and support. And of course, they will criticize where they see fit and necessary. However, what will be most appreciated is constructive engagement, is engagement that aims to build, is engagement that aims to contribute to the well-being of our country. It's an engagement that aims to contribute to taking the country forward. To shout at President Ramaphosa from the rooftops does not in any shape or form aid all these endeavors. However, at any point in time, any of the former presidents know how to get hold of President Ramaphosa and do have that direct line and access to him, should they wish to contribute constructively. Lukewarm, I don't know, that's a matter of interpretation. As I've said, let's judge the President's response based on facts. And those facts are, already government is making headway in responding to the Commission's recommendation. Already government is making headway to regain some lost ground in the fight against corruption. I enumerated some figures, for example, of monies that have been recovered. So let's rather judge it based on those facts. What people perceive it to be or what they would like it to be is neither here nor there. I think the facts should guide in terms of how we interpret the President's response in this regard. And I think it's important to harp on and overemphasize that the achievements to date, the achievements, solid, tangible achievements by various law enforcement agencies, their cases before court. So we're not just talking about an airy-fairy pie-in-the-sky document here. Work has already been done. What the president presented on Sunday, what the president delivered to Parliament on Saturday and presented to the nation on Sunday is an amplification, if you like, of work that is already underway and work that is to follow. Did I see another hand? I've got questions on my WhatsApp that I'll also need to take. Dumahule? Sorry, Khabs, are you happy?
Yeah, just a question about the members of the executive.
Oh, the members of the executives. Oh, sorry. I'm not trying to evade your questions. The president, as he indicated on Sunday, he's applying his mind. Often people have a cynical take on that line, that is applying his mind, but there's a process behind that. The president has to engage, for example, the concerned members of the executive. The president has to independently seek a legal opinion, for example, to inform him on the veracity of the issues over and above what the commission has outlined. And the president has to apply his mind in a manner that will get him to a decision that is rational, notwithstanding the fact that he is empowered by the Constitution to act in this regard. At the timeframes, I can't comment on that, except to say the president will apply his mind, and at the right time will make the decision, and that decision will be communicated appropriately. Thank you, Khat. Amanda, will you raise? Oh, Tumahulu, sorry. Oh, thank you. Amanda Koza of the Sunday Times.
Hi, Vincent. I'm just curious whether the president questions the timing of the criticism in light of the conference that's coming up in December. Thank you.
Just repeat that question, okay?
If he thinks it's linked to the December conference, all the criticism that's coming up, if it's linked to his bid for a second term, if it is.
Okay. Look, the president is not blind to the fact that there's an upcoming national conference of the African National Congress this year. But I think we need to balance the reality that a lot of his time is taken up by his responsibility as a head of state. A lot of his energy is focused on the task at hand. We have numerous challenges in this country. Amanda, as a close observer of the president, you will understand his schedule because you follow him around a lot. And the bulk of that schedule is around his commitment as the head of state. Does he spend a lot of time worrying about December? No, that's a process. ANC members, through an established process in their branches, will decide in whichever way they decide, and he will abide by their decision through those processes. Is the criticism concerning ahead of December? The president gets criticized all the time, which is par for course. He must be criticized. He must be scrutinized in terms of how he goes about carrying his duties. At the same time, he must be constructively engaged. There must be an exchange of ideas, thoughts. There must be some form of partnerships. So that's not something that concerns the president at all. As to how it happened that all former presidents had pronouncements to make in one weekend, I mean, we're not going to get into conspiracies, except to say, as you will know generally, South Africans are a very robust and engaging nation. So every day we pick up some form of media coverage or media coverage that's critical to the president. We pick up social media posts that are critical to the president. And the president takes that as in the course of the vibrancy of our democracy, as in the course of the passion that people feel about their country, the commitment that South Africans from all walks of life have towards their country, and the desire to see their country succeed. So to overemphasize three sources of criticism from, will be a little bit disingenuous. And for the president, as I've said, is really focused on the task at hand. and it spends the bulk of his time and energy focused on how to achieve what is set out to achieve. Let me give the gentleman behind Spamandla a chance. Samgelo. Before Samgelo and Spamandla.
Okay, Junior Kumalo from News 24.
Yes,
Yebo, Unjanpa. Just a quick question. The UDM president yesterday submitted a letter to the Section 89 independent panel. The letter is purportedly written by Mr. Arthur Fraser. And was written on the 23rd of June this year, in which the letter, he informs the Hawks that the claims by the president that the money, the foreign currency from his game farm came from the sale of game is not accurate. He claims that one of the president's advisors, Mr. Chauke, is the one who actually got the money from his various trips across the world. So firstly, I just wanted to find out, is the presidency aware of this letter? And two, does the president still stick to the response that the money was received from the proceeds of game?
Thank you. Samgelo.
The head of security for the president, General Rhodes, Wally Rhodes, is he officially suspended? We did not see him in the president's recent international trip to Saudi Arabia, where he usually goes with the president, as alleged during the Pala Pala burglary that they were together in Addis Ababa. Where is the head of protection services for the president? Then on the issue of constructive engagement of the president that you speak about, when last did President Ramaphosa have a constructive engagement with President Mbeki on a one-on-one basis and with former President Jacob Zuma, when you speak of constructive engagement as opposed to shouting on rooftops? Thank you.
Thank you, Samgelo. Spamandla.
Siphamandla Goke kwa ENCA. Mine is linked to what Umtungwa has asked. Looking at the president's busy schedule in November, if my memory serves me well, somewhere on the 6th or around the 6th of November, he is due to have an engagement with that independent panel that is deciding whether he has a case to answer on Pala Pala or not. He's got upcoming trips to Kenya, to Egypt, to the UK. Will he be able to meet with the panel somewhere in November, or is he going to ask for a postponement? Thank you.
Thank you. Last one to Tumahole.
Thank you, Mr. Magwenya. Tumahole Mushaudi from Newsroom Africa. Just on a different tack altogether. Parliament's Committee on Mineral Resources recently had an oversight visit to the Northwest, where the issue of zamazamas came up, and most of what we heard in terms of the submissions and the findings is that much of the violent and if you can like it, gangsterism that's linked to zamazama activities and terrorism in communities is linked to particularly Basotho nationals, as well as Mozambican and some Zimbabwean nationals, but mostly Basotho. I wonder if the president, in terms of his congratulatory message to the newly elected prime minister, would have mentioned this issue and what is being done. We had an oversight-ish visit with intelligence community there. Deputy Minister Zizikota was out there seeing the porous nature of the borders. Are there engagements with the Basotho effect to the crime situation in the country? We also heard some big talk when Minister Pegitele went out to the affected mines in the Northwest, specifically following that unfortunate gang rape incident in the community there. And some big names and kingpins were supposed to be arrested. There's been some allusions that some of these big kingpins are politically connected, if not politically active in the bigger circles, higher circles of government. What's the president's view of this? Can you name and shame some of those if you do have this intelligence?
Sure. Debo? No, let's just allow Debo and then you can squeeze in a quick one.
Okay. Bob Magwenya, I don't want to be accused of maybe misquoting what you said in the press conference, but I asked earlier on whether are you saying those who criticized President Ramaphosa are lacking facts, they've got misinformed perceptions about the president, and they are informed by rumor mongering. I just wanted to confirm that. Are you saying former President Mbeki and Zuma, they lack facts in their criticism towards the president?
Okay, Spamandla.
Just a quick one. When is the president replacing former Minister Ndandolo?
Hey, Spamandla. Can be judged, ne? Thanda ukukhuluma izinto zabantu abadala. Okay, let's start with Mtungwa. Mtungwa, as you know, that issue is under investigation by numerous law enforcement agencies. So if anybody or any individual has evidence, that evidence must be provided to law enforcement agencies to investigate. From the president's side is to continue cooperating with the investigations as he has stated. So I'm not going to comment on that document per se. Suffice to say, the investigations are underway. Last engagement between the president and former President Mbeki and former President Zuma, as you know, former President Zuma has had legal challenges and sentences to serve. So that question is a mute one. Former President Mbeki, if I'm not mistaken, I remember there must have been a phone call of some sort, sometime between June and July, but I can't put an exact date, but it wasn't a face-to-face engagement. But if there was a need for one, if President Mbeki requested one, it will be granted. There isn't a, you can't measure the relationship based on the regularity of meetings, I mean, I have a very good relationship with you, Samgela, and I see you during the president's events, but that we don't break bread often doesn't mean that we don't have a good working relationship. The panel. So in terms of the rules don't require a meeting. The rules require a submission, which the president will make. The panel has invited evidence from a number of people. That evidence must be shared and submitted to the president before he responds. And so the president will respond accordingly, but the rules do not require a meeting per se. So he won't request a postponement because there's no requirement for a meeting. Zamazamas, Lesotho, Tumaholo. Tumaholo, you will have seen that the police have made significant progress in cracking down against the illegal mining activities. You will have seen that the police have been quite active in this regard. Over and above that, individuals that have been apprehended have been charged for a number of crimes, including violations of immigration laws, etc. So law enforcement agencies are taking care of that situation. The Department of Home Affairs, alongside other law enforcement agencies, are looking into the porous nature of our borders and addressing that matter. I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a border agency that was launched by the Department of Home Affairs, and there is more collaboration with other law enforcement agencies in that regard. Will the president raise this matter with the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister or Prime Minister-elect? On Friday, the president is attending an inauguration for now. As to whether there will be an opportunity for bilaterals or not, I doubt it, if you kind of understand the occasion of an inauguration. But I'm sure in the near future, there will certainly be some bilateral engagements between the two heads of state. I think what is important is that we focus on our side with respect to ensuring that we deal decisively with illegal mining activity and the criminality that is around it. Secondly, that we deal with the porous nature of our borders. So it's a law enforcement exercise that needs to be focused on, one that will not have any impact on our diplomatic relations with Lesotho. Ndebu, I'm not saying those who criticize the president lacked facts. With Lesotho. Ndebu, I'm not saying those who criticize the president lacked facts. When the president makes cabinet announcement, he will announce them accordingly. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of this media briefing. Tumahole, last question. Thank you.
My question. The so-called big names that are going to be, or was meant to be unveiled in terms of this, Zama scourge, saying that there were major players, both internally in South Africa and even reaching up to the higher levels of government. That was supposed to be exposed. Minister, Pegikele made some allusions to that. Is the president aware of who these big names are, what's being done, and who are these big names? We've been waiting with bated breath, I think, for the longest while.
Police are doing their work in that regard, and that work is ongoing. And I think let's wait for the police to conclude their work, and the appropriate announcements will follow. Through the National Security Council, the president is well briefed on progress being made against illegal mining activities. Through the National Security Council, the president is well briefed on various efforts aimed at increasing the state's capacity in responding to organized crime. And so the president is aware. Whether it's names or not, it's neither here nor there. From a big picture point of view, he is aware of what's being done by law enforcement agencies in that regard. Colleagues, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have time to do this again next week. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Cheers. Oh, just one last issue. Sorry, my apologies. The guys on WhatsApp will kill me for this. I just need to address an issue that was raised by Bloomberg on the WhatsApp line, and that is the issue concerning a Russian yacht reportedly to be sailing to South African waters. South Africa's obligations with respect to sanctions relate to only those specifically adopted by the United Nations. Currently, there are no UN-imposed sanctions on the particular individual. Therefore, South Africa has no legal obligation to abide by the sanctions that the US and the EU have decided to impose within specific jurisdictions. For as long as individuals abide by our immigration laws, we have no reason to prevent their entry into South Africa. Hope that clarifies that issue. On that note, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope to see you next week. Thank you.